Welcome to Sailing Avanti. We are Gerard and Jacqueline, sailing our 41-foot monohull Avanti around the world from Cape Town, South Africa. It's time to go through our safety gear. We're obviously preparing for the Pacific crossing, which is up to 30-day passage. And we've only been doing a few day passages the last few months, so we're not used to doing a very long passage, and we haven't really gone through our safety gear properly. It's been longer than a year that we've been sailing now, so it's that time in preparation for our Pacific crossing. The one safety gear item or equipment that we definitely use the most is our PFDs, our personal flotation devices. And we have these very nice, well, it's not the top of the line one, it's probably mid-range. We have these Viking PFDs that inflate basically as soon as you fall into the water, or you can manually inflate them with a manual trigger. And these are quite comfortable to wear. They're not as bulky as normal life jackets. They fit nicely, and we basically wear them every night on passage, and if the weather gets a little bit rough, we wear them even during the day. We do also attach a tether or a lanyard to them, which we clip on a strong point. And if it's only the two of us sailing, the rule is to always clip on at night, especially when you're alone in the cockpit. I'm going to open this one up and just show you kind of how they look inside. We've just serviced these, so they're ready to go. So ours is pretty easy to open up. It just has a velcro strip all around, and it's got this inflatable, also highly visible reflective inflatable portion. So when you deploy it manually, you just pull this this little lever, and it basically inflates this yellow part with a CO2 gas canister. It also has a water activated trigger that basically shoots a hole into the canister, and it blows up when it gets properly wet. So when it rains a little bit, this thing doesn't deploy. It has to be quite wet or submerged underwater. Then it also has a light on it, so we put these man overboard lights on that's activated when the salt water creates a contact between those two little terminals. You can also activate it manually, and these lights last quite long, so we test them often. This one only expires in 2026. On this side, if it blows up, it's got a built-in whistle, so that you can maybe blow when there's a ship close, so that you can be heard if you are in the water. And there's also a manual inflation tube, so if it does lose pressure, you can just flip up the cap, and there's a little non-return valve there. You can just basically inflate it yourself. Our second most important life safety feature is obviously our life raft. We hope we never use this, by the way. So this is a 6-man life raft, and we just serviced it in Cape Town before we left. The service is valid for 3 years, so we only have to service it again end of 2024. So hopefully we're back in Cape Town before we have to service it. This is, like I said, a 6-man, and we had a look at it when they serviced it, so that we could see just what is inside the life raft, just to get familiar, because you never get a chance to open these things or deploy them in anger. And if you have to do it, it's good to just know what's in there and what's not in there. There is some water rations in here, a knife, a light, some flares as well, so limited stock inside here. It's tied down to this structure on the deck, but it's also tied down to the line that you deploy it with to the boat, so that if somebody throws it overboard in anger, it doesn't float away. It just happened on the GGR that one of the boats that actually sank, the guy just made a slip knot tightened to the boat, and the slip knot actually got loose and the life raft started floating away. So it's important to make sure that it's tied to the boat, and that you actually have a knife when you get into it so that you can cut yourself free if you can't get the knot loose. Our Iridium Go sat phone, which is normally mounted inside the boat, is also one of our probably most used safety features, both from our PFD life jackets. So this we use to communicate. We can SMS. At the moment it's deactivated. We just cancel it to save some money for a few months when we don't do far offshore passages, but we're about to reactivate it. And this also gives us a tracking signal every hour that you can see on a link that's in the description below. And yeah, you can make satellite phone calls with this, or you can just hit an emergency button to send out a distress signal to pre-programmed cell phone numbers. So if there is an emergency, we would grab this obviously almost first and put it in our grab bag. In terms of our grab bag, and this is this orange, hopefully watertight container that we'll grab in case of an emergency and throw it into the life raft, or just throw it overboard because it's supposed to float. This is our really crucial kind of measure that we have if we have an issue and we have to go overboard. So the first thing that's important for this grab bag is to actually make sure that it is watertight. So once in a while, screw on the lid, or empty it out, screw on the lid, and just make sure it doesn't take on water. In terms of the content, we have a Ziploc bag in here, just as a double layer of water protection. And inside the Ziploc bag, we have a charge bank. So for in case we do get time to take our phones with us, we can charge our phones with this charge bank. There's obviously a few charge cables in here. And there's also another satellite device. It's a Garmin InReach Mini. So this is really our backup to our Iridium Go. We're on a very cheap subscription per month, so we only get 10 messages per month, or SMSs, but you can also send a distress signal with this guy, and it's very rugged and waterproof. So this stays in our grab bag always, and this is really our means. If we don't get time to reach our Iridium Go and take it with us, this little guy will help us to communicate with the outside world. We also have a few lights in here. It's just a solar powered, very cheap little light to make some extra light in the life raft or to draw attention. We have waterproof torches in here, as well as batteries for these torches to make sure that they last at least a few hours or a few days. We also put our handheld VHF in here, so this makes it obviously possible to communicate with ships that's within line of sight almost. So if you're in a life raft, line of sight is not very far, but at least you can VHF them if they can't see you, and you can draw attention to them. Then also some critical features in here is our flares. We have 4 rocket flares or parachute flares that's in date. We also have a few that's expired, so we've got plenty of stock. We also have a handheld flare that you can deploy and just hold in your hand. These parachute flares shoot quite high up in the sky, and they're visible for quite far at night, but you don't have any means to attract attention to you or to your exact location. So these help a lot at night to just pinpoint your location for somebody else. We also have this smoke canister, so this is for just creating a large plume of orange smoke when you basically want to draw attention to you during the day. Then other things in here is a cell phone charge cable. Like I said, we do have a charge bank, and if we have our phones with us, we can actually use this. It's important for us to take our phones with us because the Iridium Go interfaces through our phones. but if we don't manage to take those with, we have the Garmin InReach Mini, and then just a lot of batteries and some basic headlamps. So that's pretty much what we have in the grab bag, and we try and make sure that everything is charged in there. So we charge the iridium, we charge the battery bank and the handheld before we put it in on a longer passage. In case we have a man overboard, which we also hope, or really hope, that we never have, we have these horseshoe or life rings, and they've got a man overboard light on them. This light gets activated when it falls in the water, and it basically turns upright. So it's important to check these batteries as well, and that the light actually works. So you would throw this overboard once you realize there is a man overboard, and it's also tied to this Dan buoy. So it's a buoy, basically our South African flag is also fixed to it, but it's got an orange flag right at the top, which gives you a bit of a visual for where the man overboard is, and it also gives the man overboard some visual to swim towards if he's looking for the life ring. So hopefully with the life ring and the Dan buoy, the man overboard can get to those things and float, or make it a little bit more comfortable to float, and the boat can also see those things and go and pick him up. The last safety device, but definitely not the least, is our EPIRB, and that's basically an emergency position beacon system that sends out a signal as soon as it hits water, and it sends it out to a satellite, and that's relayed all the way to the emergency response center in Cape Town, which has a few cell phone numbers on hand. So if they do get a signal from our EPIRB, which is programmed with our details, they would first phone those cell phone numbers, and that's close relatives, to ask them if we are in fact actually sailing. And if those people then confirm that we are sailing and the vicinity is almost correct where they're picking up the signal, they would start coordinating a search and rescue effort. These new EPIRBs, and we bought a new one, we had a very old one that expired, they also have a GPS signal. So the old ones just used to have a satellite signal, and it wouldn't give a very accurate range in terms of where you are. But the new ones have a built-in GPS, so it also sends your actual position, and it's accurate within 100 meters or so. So if the boat does capsize and this goes underneath, or the boat sinks and this goes with the boat, it will deploy and send maybe one signal. So the crucial thing about this is to make it accessible. That's why it's next to the companionway, to immediately take it off if you have a chance, and strap it to yourself or to something. It's got this Velcro band, and it's got a rope that you can just pull out and tie to yourself. So just make sure you take this thing with. It will automatically activate when it goes into the water, or you can slide like a switch open, and you press the red button and it deploys the signal without being in the water. So yeah, this is really our last resort. You can't obviously communicate with this, but it sends a signal, and the battery should be okay, they say, for 48 hours. So it will send a signal for 2 days, and hopefully there's another ship close by that can reach you within 2 days. Otherwise your signal might die out. But we also have some other communication devices that we can rely on, and these are typically tested, they say, every month. We don't do it that often to save the battery, so we would just do it before a longer passage, and you just hit the test button for a few seconds, and there's a few confirmation lights that come on that tests the beacon without sending out an actual signal, and it also tests the GPS function. In terms of emergency provisioning, we have a bit more space now on the boat if we do this passage with only the two of us. So we do plan to pack a little bag with just some warm clothes and some provisioning like canned foods, so that we can just throw that onto the life raft if we need it. But one important thing on the life raft is obviously the availability of fresh water. So we don't have a small little emergency water maker, which is very nifty that a lot of cruisers have these days. We just have a stock of supply of emergency water. So we've prepared a few water bottles and we store them in a dedicated place so that we always know that they're full and they're ready to go. And that's underneath one of the saloon bunks, and there's about 6 to 8 bottles or 1 gallon or 5 liter bottles in here. And the special thing about these is we just empty a little bit of water out of the bottle so that there's a little bit of air, so that if we do throw them overboard, that they actually float and you can see them. Otherwise they will just basically sink, or they might float below the surface. So we also rotate them once in a while just to make sure the water is still good. We just bought some new water in Panama, so they are ready for the Pacific crossing.
Thank you for joining us this week. Next week we finally get measured for our Panama Canal transit, and our new sail arrives a day before we go through. Please give the video a like if you enjoyed it, or leave a comment with any questions you might have about our safety. A big thank you to our Patreons for supporting the making of these videos. You can join them by clicking on the link in the description below.